The North Kerry Hurling Board was founded in 1925. Although the Gaelic Athletic Association was not founded until 1884, it is certain from well-documented sources that the games of the Gael, and in particular hurling and various versions of it, were played in many parts of the country for centuries. In the northern part of County Kerry, the game of hurling was a traditional pastime. Tough economic conditions and few alternative social outlets provided the opening for the playing of a native game, where the raw materials required little more than basic organisation, local fields and homemade hurls and slithers. It took until well into the 20th century for a greater awakening of the value of the GAA, and a prime catalyst in Kerry was the setting up of the district board structure. This is the story of the various people, events and factors that went towards organising, leading, steadying and helping it to reach and look back on 100 years of North Kerry hurling. Its first officers were President Steve Grady, Lixnaw, Secretary Tommy O'Sullivan, Ballyduff, and Treasurer Jack McCarthy, Kilflynn.
Steve Grady was a great Lixnaw man and hurled for both Lixnaw and Kerry. Steve was heavily involved that when the War of Independence started in 1919, he was second lieutenant of the company, and through his part in actions taken and operations over the coming couple of years, Steve became well known to the headquarters in Listowel, and by June of 1920 Steve was elevated to the officer in command of the Kerry 3rd Battalion. So in 1925 the Listowel Club put a motion into the County Convention that the board should establish divisional boards, and the hurling fraternity locally weren't going to be found wanting. And Steve Grady, with Tommy O'Sullivan of Ballyduff and Jack McCarthy of Kilflynn, well known for his part in managing the Tulla Gamecocks team to win a county championship, disputed maybe in 1916 against Kinmare, and subsequently had success with Abbeydorney in the following years in the North Kerry League. These three men gathered the clubs together and they organised a meeting in Lixnaw on the 13th of April 1925. Steve at that point was the caretaker at the convent, so would have had access to the hall, so that's almost certainly where the meeting was held there. At the meeting, 9 clubs affiliated to the board. There were Artfert, Abbeydorney, Ardrahan, Ballyduff, Ballyheigue, Ballyrehan, Causeway, Finoog and Lixnaw. A second meeting was held the following week where 2 more clubs affiliated. They were Athergown and Listowel, and it was at that meeting that the officers of the board were ratified. Steve Grady was elected to the position of president, Jack McCarthy was elected as vice president, and Tommy O became secretary and treasurer. Now at the time, the positions of president and vice president would have equated to modern day chairman and vice chairman. Steve held the position of president from 1925 until 1929, when he was succeeded by Jack McCarthy. After that, his involvement with the club continued, and spent many years after that actually refereeing for the board.
Tommy O'Sullivan, I suppose, was a very popular sportsman in around Kerry and beyond. Not alone for his hurling prowess, but he was also a big man into greyhounds, and he won a lot of honours. I think he won the Irish Cup at one stage. Now, when his playing days in the 1920s, successes were few and far between for Ballyduff or for Kerry, but he played with both.
While the board got off to a flying start with much enthusiasm, hurling could not remove itself from the mood of the times. People had to make ends meet, and sport was not priority number 1. Yet many were willing to get involved in getting hurling moving, and it had a very positive influence in a country emerging from hard and troubled times.
Hurling is very important to people of Abbeydorney. Down through the years, there was a big involvement by a lot of different people, and also in the North Kerry Hurling Board. But originally, I think after the Troubles, you know, it brought communities together and brought clubs together, and I think it was a big help to the life of the community. Abbeydorney were there from the off. I played a big part in the North Kerry Board. With Tom Harty, Bill Harmon. Down through the years, there were other people involved. Johnny Costello, Nicholas Scollard, a lot of different people involved from Abbeydorney.
Considering there was, you know, several years of war, revolution, civil war in Kerry, hurling was in a pretty bad state once we got to 1923, 1924. But the first attempt, I suppose, to kind of revive hurling, particularly, of course, in its North Kerry heartland, was, of course, the establishment of the North Kerry Hurling Board in 1925. That was going to be a league. It was a league format originally among 11 teams: Causeway, Ballyduff, Ballyheigue, Ardfert, and so on. And I think the idea was that the first competition would be played for a set of medals, and the runners-up would get a set of jerseys. And I think affiliation fees were about 12 shillings, six pence at the time. And in the first final, I think Abbeydorney beat Ballyduff. And there was high hopes, you know, because of that initiative, because as the league went on, the standard of hurling, you know, was impressing people. And then, of course, that same year, the National Hurling League is established. Kerry is put into the second division, and they get off to a flying start, really, by beating Waterford very well. And of course, in terms of some of the issues with hurling in Kerry, particularly when you get to North Kerry, is the social and economic conditions at the time. You know, this is a time of mass immigration again, coming to the 1920s, huge unemployment. The economy is really struggling in the first decade of independence. Not helped, of course, then when Fianna Fáil get in and Eamon de Valera and the beginnings of the economic war. And you must remember that, you know, even though the best land is in North Kerry, it's still an agricultural economy based very much on small farms and small farming. So with mass immigration, you know, there's a huge decline of young people. You know, the young people that are needed, the young men in particular that are needed to kind of backbone these clubs. And I suppose North Kerry is particularly vulnerable to that because it is such a rural area. And that's one of the big problems with hurling in Kerry in this area. It never does establish itself in one of the big urban areas like Tralee, Listowel, Killarney. So you have in North Kerry a very small geographical area, a number of clubs, sometimes, you know, 2 clubs in the one parish, competing for an ever declining amount of young men, you know, because of the effects of immigration, because of the effects of the depression in agriculture and the greater economy.
Most emigrated out of necessity. The population of Kerry in 1926 was just over 149,000, down 50,000 on the figure at the end of the 1800s. The single largest source of employment in Kerry was in the agricultural sector, employing almost 2/3 of the workforce, with very little industry in the county. Many of those who left kept in touch with home by letter. News not as immediate as today.
I grew up in Brandonwell, and some of my very earliest memories really is of playing hurling almost before we were out of the diapers. It was very important to us, and you know, around here it's kind of very historic. My mother came here from Rahaneen, the castle as they call it, and Rita, her sister, we used to play camogie at the time. And some of the memories we have, you know, very early days, North Kerry Championship was nearly as important as the county championship. The hurling was something that kept us together, you know, it was kind of like a religion to us, and you just, you know, just practice all the time. I found it hard, you know, going away to America. Actually, leaving the hurling was one of the hardest things of all, you know. And now at time I look back on it now, I was helping out in the parish about 100 miles from Sacramento. And the Sunday afternoon I'd get my hurley and go up and be pucking the ball off the side of the wall and said, I wish I was back playing, you know, with Ardfert or with whoever. And it was so important for us, you know, it kind of kept us together overseas. We used to play, we used to get together a few times of the year, and we'd get a hurling team in Sacramento and we'd play San Francisco in hurling. And at that time getting the results was, we were waiting forever for the result of the 1967 county final between Ardfert and Crotta, wasn't it? And it was a week later we got the result by mail, and we were praying and everything that Ardfort would win it. And for us anyway, it was kind of a home away from home, being able to play the hurling, and I loved it.
As one of the long-established clubs, Kilmoyley is a classic example of a location and community where hurling is ingrained. And in the early years, they were a dominant force. In between, they had many ups and downs, but they persevered and rose from the ashes and have a strong and vibrant history to look back on.
Yeah, so hurling in Kilmoyley dates back, I suppose, pre the foundation of the GA really. There's records of games between Kilmoyley and Abbeydorney, Kilmoyley and Lixnaw before the GA was founded. And I suppose it was after then that the GA was founded in 1884 that organised championship games and hurling games were throughout the county, North Kerry in particular. And Kilmoyley were a strong force at the time. After the War of Independence and the Civil War, Kilmoyley faded from the map completely. And when the North Kerry Board was founded in 1925, Kilmoyley were not at the table. And it wasn't until 1932 then that Kilmoyley won a junior North Kerry competition, and that signalled then the resurgence of hurling in Kilmoyley and this parish.
In Kilmoyley it was very important because it didn't matter how many degrees you had or how big your car was or where you went on holidays, but if you hurled for the club, that was the big one. We used to train, it was irregular enough, it depended on what cows were calving and weren't calving and what cattle were around, so when the field was free, we'd head over. And my memory of it is that as we got older then, you'd have the massive smell of embrocation.
The book then, Kilmoyley to the Rescue, was launched in November in the year 2000, of course, put together. It took some time and it took huge dedication by the late Sean Joseph O'Connor, and it was launched by the great Micheál Murray.
As the years moved on, the role of the GAA strengthened nationally. It celebrated its 50th year Golden Jubilee in 1934. The North Kerry Hurling Board, however, had good and bad years. Following the leadership of the founding officers, internal wranglings over fixtures and the difficulty in retaining officers were clear obstacles. Yet many individuals took up officer positions in subsequent years, and most of these were just ordinary people who selflessly gave their time and organisational skills to ensure that the game of hurling was available to players, but also to the wider population who saw it as part of what we are. The board continued to provide hurling matches in a very rural community. It gave the people something tangible to talk about, and by their deeds provided local heroes. Men who, by their skills on the hurling fields, gave them an enhanced standing in local communities.
I suppose the North Kerry Hurling Board, its existence has been very important, because if you take North Kerry and take the hinterland of the 7 clubs, they're big farming areas, and back in that time, back in the foundation of it, it was a case of work and then go out in the farmer's field and go out and have hurling. And I suppose with the foundation of the board, it gave game time to these locals. There was no such thing as pubs or any gizmos like that time, and I think it has grown from that. And I think the North Kerry Board, its existence has been the backbone of the Kerry hurling. I have no doubt in saying that. But I suppose the vision of them in that time knew they had a good quality product and hurling, and the neighbouring farmers around and the neighbouring parishes, they created their own leagues, I suppose, before they were really documented. And that was hugely important to the up-and-coming people and our ancestors who put it there, and for us people who came afterwards and now our own, like the children, is that it's a part of our culture, it's a part of our religion really. It's in our DNA, North Kerry hurling.
The sole intermediate club in the district is the Ladies' Walk Hurling Club. Just where did this name come from?
Well, Ladies Walk Club was formed. It was, first of all, the geography is, the Ladies Walk is from Ballincrust across to Dunn's Cross, we'll say, over near the ferry bridge. And it was formed first in 1930, and the first reference to it that I could see from our Kerry point of view was 1931. It was formed then, and then there was a kind of I suppose, a bit of a lapse. And the reason it was called Ladies Walk is that the women from the ladies from the great house in Retu used to walk from Retu House over as far as the road, as far as Ballyheigue and back, and that was why it was named Ladies Walk. But it was 1965 again before Ladies Walk was reformed by a group of lads like the likes of Martin Whalen and Sonny Hallen and David Joy and John Connor. But two of those people certainly were involved in our Kerry board officerships over the years. And it was formed, I think, that time, we say, even in the 30s and in the 1960s, there was teams all over the place. There was Ardorgown, Ballinclougher, Killahan, Ballinorig, there was teams everywhere, and it was formed, it's supposed to give fellas a chance to play hurling at a level that wouldn't be senior, we'll say. Like, it was like a social hurling type thing, you know. It didn't matter whether you won or not, but at least you were out playing hurling every evening, and it would kind of give a formality to playing hurling in the evenings. They used to play down in a place called what they used to call Whalen's Mash, or Marsh is the right word to use, but it was I suppose a formality of social hurling, fellas getting together every evening and playing hurling, and they formed a club. You see a huge cross-section of players from different areas play with the Walkers, a huge cross-section of the social fabric of the area, we'll say. Like, these days you have lots to talk about social inclusion and all the rest of it, but Ladies Walk had players from the travelling community who played in, like, the McCarthy's and the O'Briens. So there's, you know, in the early days there was hardly any link between the Ballyduff club and the Ladies Walk, but of course in latter years it has become a kind of a feeder for Ballyduff seniors, and the opposite. When fellas kind of come to the end of their careers, they end up coming down to the Walkers and playing with the Walkers, you know. So it's kind of a, they're not the same club, obviously, two separate clubs, but they do work well together in that sense.
From the early days of reports in the local newspapers, the 1980s brought greater media demands and opportunities.
Became PRO on Kerry Hurling Board back in 1984 with Diarmaid O'Cahon as chairman at the time. The first thing we said we better do was to get more coverage for our games, so we met up with Kerry's Eye and the Kerryman, and to this day I claim that I got Kerry Hurling introduced into Kerry's Eye. Going back into the 90s then, with Radio Kerry advancing, all of the games improved immensely with the media straight away. Like, you had games on radio and television, and nowadays with social media and mobile phones and everything, all games are covered immensely. Hurling in Ballyheigue goes back a long way, and there's a great tradition of it here in the parish, and the All-Ireland in 1891 was a great achievement, but we got some help from other clubs around, Kilmay and Lixnaw especially. But then we went for a few lean years until 1955, when we made the breakthrough after 64 years. And since then, hurling has come on leaps and bounds in the parish.
As the years went on, standards improved. The GAA did not stand still. It developed fields and recognised the valued impact of coaching.
So in 1988, I became a GDA coach. It was a fancy name for coach. GDA means Games Development Administrator with the Kerry County Board. My job was going around to the primary schools coaching. So hurling in North Kerry in the last 100 years has been brilliant for families all over North Kerry, for my family, and it's just great. Causeway in the start of that 100 years won a county championship in 1932 and didn't win another championship for 47 years. At that time in Causeway, there was no sports field like we're standing in at the moment. There was just fields that were rented from farmers. I remember Leary's field, Quilter's field and Lyons' field that we were going to. There was no coaching at the time. What would happen there was the seniors would arrive in Leary's, and there might be 20 there, and to be a 10-a-side game that'd be picked straight away. Maybe one sliotar. The sliotar would get stuck in the bushes and you'd be searching all night for the sliotar, and then back with the match would start again. One of the big developments over the last probably 30 or 40 years, maybe 28 years that I was coaching, and maybe 30 years, has been the development of coaching and the hurleys now, and the slitters, and the availability of hurleys and slitters and helmets to kids and all that sort of thing in North Kerry. Like that's all over North Kerry now. It's swamped with hurleys and swamped with coaches, and really good coaches who've gone to courses and trained, and that's been a massive help to the standard of hurling now in North Kerry.
You can't beat tradition. The continuity within families over the years, the rivalry between the clubs and parishes, well-honed skills, and the tools of the trade, although in short supply, were well cared for.
I have been involved in the North Kerry Hurling Board since the late 1940s, and the reason that was the local man Johnny Casey was a taxi driver, and he was the treasurer of the board. I had a neighbour of mine, John Joe Sullivan, who would be synonymous with the North Kerry Hurling Board down through the generations of the people, and normally we would jump in and go to the matches.
I played hurling with Bella when I started in the early 70s, then with St Brendan's afterwards, and then a good bit with Kerry as well. I had a great career. I enjoyed every minute of it. I loved the hurling. I grew up in Bella. There would be a strong tradition of hurling in my mother's family. There would be Catties. And her father, Phil, or Philly, they called him, would have played with Kerry in 1891, as did his brother. So we're very proud of that tradition. Growing up, there was no great emphasis to play with any club or anything, but just play the game of hurling. And my Uncle John went to town one day and brought home 2 hurleys for myself and Joe, my brother. And what was ironic, kind of really, later on in life, John spent years repairing hurleys for the club here.
Yeah, like every parish and every club had its own, expert who could fix hurleys, and you might be lucky enough to get a new hurley for your birthday. But as the weeks and months went on, the hurley got heavier because you might crack the hurley and you had to get it hooped, and you might have to have hoop it again. So by the end of the day, you could be carrying a serious weight with you. Like everything was shared. I mean, when you tell young lads now about how primitive things were, like they just laugh at you. But you see, we were happy. We were happy with what we had.
But the one thing I vividly remember was nobody had a hurley then. We just went down to the local wood, cut the branch of a tree and made the best we could for our hurley then was known as the crew. And by going to playing matches, you got an opportunity. The club supplied the hurleys. The hurleys then would be nothing like you have today. They certainly were a much lower standard.
But the slitter was the big thing for me, because these slitters now were given to me a while ago, and they belonged to back in the day, our own time. Now, when that slitter got heavy, it was as heavy as lead, as the saying goes, and sure, you wouldn't get great distance with it, with your puck. So that meant that the game was slower and it was tougher.
But there was always a team in Turbrid, a team in Arfert, a team in Banna. So my underage hurling would have been with Banna. But there was always hurling in the loch back in Banna, as right to Banna Strand, and in the Cool Trag below in Sandy Lane. There was always games there, fellas in Banna School. They were just kind of a social thing, just played the game of hurling. And in North Kerry, it is very hard to define what hurling means to people in North Kerry. But it means a huge amount. It's our identity, and it's a given.
Ardfert was the sports field, like it was our local sports field, it was our local Crow Park, like in North Kerry finals which had been played the majority of them in Ardfert. It was a fine field, and it was perceived by the Kilmiley gang to be a lively field, in the sense that the ball would travel on it. There was a good surface there, and the North Kerry was always about a fella could cycle to Ardfert, whereas he couldn't cycle to Tralee, it was too far away. But the North Kerry scene was more localised, and then the games were organised, and if you got beaten in the championship earlier on, you had a second chance in North Kerry. So it was a chance for maybe attrition as well.
Tradition and continuity is evident across all the clubs. Take Kilflynn, for example. All the primary schools in the parish, including Clondouglas, Kilflynn, Drumclough and Kappa, took part in the North Kerry Primary School Leagues, and many of the surnames from that time are still evident in the team lists of the 21st century.
There was a national schools competition organised by North Kerry Board, and I look at the names on that. The Kilflynn School won it, but the names on that, they went on to win with the purses, the championship, a couple of championships, and they went on to win with Crotta after that. So when I look at those names again, I see it coming right through, even to present day Crotta teams. So that legacy is there, and there is fierce pride in hurling in Kilflynn. You know, I suppose it's something like farming, our business, you know, our trades. It just runs down through families.
While games were played and oft forgotten, it is also so important to record and retain in one form or another the history of our games, the stories of those who played them, and the people behind the scenes who made them happen. North Kerry is fortunate that our history is available in various formats: club histories, DVDs, match programmes, and an extensive archive.
An archive relating to hurling is not just about the histories of the clubs. Over the years, we've been very fortunate in Kerry, really, that we've had huge support for hurling in the media. The Kerry local newspapers, for example, the Kerry Champion, the Kerryman, Kerry's Eye, and of course, in latter days, Radio Kerry, and they've all given huge support to the game of hurling. And of course, the newspapers themselves are a huge record, really. For instance, I have a Kerry Champion here from 1951, Ballyduff and Crotta, another thriller. But it also gives the teams and the scorers, and they're great records for the future when people are doing research. We're very fortunate that most of the minute books of the North Kerry Hurling Board have survived and have been placed on deposit at the Kerry Library Archives in Tralee. The earliest available one is from 1931 to 1937, and again these are very important historical documents, and the fact that they have been deposited means that they are available in a safe place for posterity. A number of the North Kerry hurling clubs have published their histories, for example St Brendan's and Ballyduff, and others have a lot of their history documented in books like Kilmiley to the Rescue or Abbeydorney, Our Own Place. Once clubs publish these, it's important that they're made available in the local libraries and kept there for posterity.
2024 was a monumental year in the history of the Abbeydorney Club. As well as winning the Kerry County Senior Championship after a gap of 50 years, they also won the North Kerry Senior League and, for the very first time, the North Kerry Senior Hurling Championship. Their history, development, facilities, and the views of some of those closely involved, including a current player and club captain, show how much hurling means to their community.
So yeah, the first time I suppose I was captain for the club was back when I was under 15. I think we won a North Kerry Championship under 15, and the North Kerry Championships are very important to the underage because they really encourage participation, etc. And even in the North Kerry Championships, there's A and B competitions. So if you're not the best team in it, the weaker teams also get a chance at the B competition. So yeah, it really helped to encourage the weaker clubs and to bring success to them. So there's a massive tradition of hurling in North Kerry. There's a small pocket in Kerry which is taken really seriously, and all the clubs are very close. So there's a great rivalry there, but there's also great friendships there, and the friendships you make from underage and in school. I know the lads that go to Causeway Secondary School would be great friends with when they're playing against each other. There's a great rivalry there. So yeah, the pocket of North Kerry hurling is small, but it's very, very strong.
The field was officially reopened in 2012, and it was named after a great clubman and a great North Kerry boardman, Tom Healy, and is known as Tom Healy Park.
Our floodlights are there to facilitate all North Kerry boards, camogie boards, ladies football, matches that weren't able to be played in evening time, and we'll say fixtures that were getting congested are able to be played outside in the club there now because of the light facilities.
In 1965, the Lixnaw Club acquired its club grounds at Cool Ruan. Located adjacent to the River Brick, the grounds also include a ruined structure known locally as the Hermitage. The official opening of Hermitage Park took place in 1982, and recent developments include a floodlit AstroTurf facility and walkway with dressing rooms and a meeting room. The Lixnaw club crest consists of an image of the Hermitage, with a representation of the nearby River Brick, a salmon on a shield, and a circlet bearing the name of the club. Ballyheigue has a long tradition of hurling, with good and not so good years, but it remains firmly a hurling stronghold and has contributed so much to the administrative side of the North Kerry Hurling Board.
The hurling club really in Ballyheigue was founded in 1892, the year after Kerry winning the All-Ireland. I'm sure hurling was played long before that in Ballyheigue. They won the Junior County Championship in 1913. And success was sporadic really, I suppose. They won a North Kerry Junior Championship in 1926. They were defeated by Banna in a junior final in 1928. In 1932 they split into two clubs. There was Ballyheigue and Castle Rovers. Neither of them got anywhere, and they re-amalgamated in 1933 and they won the North Kerry Junior Championship, and they entered the County Senior Championship in 1934, and they were beaten by Causeway in the early rounds of it. In 1936, 5 Ballyheigue players played with St. Brendan's and they won the County Senior Championship. Hurling was played like in several townlands. You know, it was played in Cloughanleash, it was played in Tirshanahan, the Bulls Field in Ballylongan. Were kind of noted places for it, Fiora in Kerryhead.
Hurling is a long tradition in my own local parish, Ballyheigue. We can't forget people like John Joe Sullivan, who was the cornerstone of the club for years and years, and Michael Burkitt, who took practically over from him. The late John Joe was instrumental in buying the field, and he was the cornerstone of the club for years. The field was purchased by John Joe and Willie Lean in the early 70s, and it's ironic that his granddaughter is carrying on the tradition.
My grandfather has a huge association with the North Kerry Hurling Board and the County Board down through the years. Proudest times for us as a family was the North Kerry Hurling Senior Championship was named after my grandfather, and the Ballyheigue Chicago Association presented that cup to the North Kerry Hurling Board. We have a fabulous picture at home of my brother holding the cup, and that was a real proud moment for us as a family, because I know how much it would have meant to my grandfather. He just lived and died for it, and you know, when the field was named after him, again, huge proud moment for us.
The North Kerry Hurling Board obviously was a great catalyst because it organised the competitions for us. Now, we were too young to articulate the value of it, but looking back on it now, like, it was so important because there was no other source or organisation to organise the games and the sports for us. So like, you didn't just go up to Ardfert and challenge them, you know, there was a competition organised by the North Kerry Board, and we didn't have motor cars. We'd go up and we went up the Bon Oaks, took the shortcut to Ardfert. We might have maybe walked 3 or 4 miles before we tug out. But that was the way it was. We were healthy, we were fit, our mind was stimulated, and when you went to do a few summers in the evening, the mind was dead clear, there was no pollution there.
North Kerry provided games. All you had in the county that time was county championship, you know, and county league then came the way latterly in the county. But North Kerry provided game time for everybody, from, you know, once we were able to catch a hurl and knew what it was about. But I suppose the other thing as well is that the North Kerry Board grew and have played a major part in the growth of the camogie in the county, because you look at it, you look at all the clubs around, that the girls that are making up our camogie teams, both now at club level in Killard and all the neighbouring clubs around, we've 5 of them, and they're all their brothers, their fathers, their grandfathers played.
So I started playing hurling when I was probably 5 or 6 with the boys in Causeway. There was no camogie when I first started, so that's how I started playing.
I suppose when myself and my 2 brothers were of the age, we were brought down to the Causeway Hurling Club, and I suppose the tradition carried on then, and I suppose camogie and hurling have a big connection in North Kerry, and it's great to see the support by the North Kerry Hurling Board.
And I suppose then when I was about 10 or 11, camogie started in Kerry in 2006, and I suppose I switched over to that then. I was probably playing both for a while, camogie and hurling. But then once I was 12 or 13, I was only allowed to play camogie, so I played then with Causeway. I moved on then to St. Anne's in Claremorris and Kerry as well, so that's how it all started.
From the days of playing in farmers' fields and temporary goalposts, hurling facilities have moved on significantly.
Now that our pitches, we have new pitches, sand-based pitches, heavily drained and everything, but it takes knowledge and it takes interest to keep them alive and to maintain them. And in fairness, all the clubs have good groundsmen now, and with a good knowledge of following the equipment, number one, having the grass well cut, pitches are lively, the ball is travelling faster, even for the fitness now is huge, grounds are lively, but it takes big interest by somebody in the club to go into ground maintenance, keeping the grass nurtured, TLC, plenty TLC to the grounds.
Nothing can continue without finance. The early treasurers had different challenges to those of today. In 1942, the board paid out £1 for field rent and 10 shillings to the Ballyheigue band for their services.
Since '86 I've been in the North Kerry board, mainly in the finance side of things. We have progressed a lot over the years. When I came in first was mainly gates that was keeping the board afloat. But over the years we had initiatives like the county final programme, which really stood to the board and made a lot of money for the board. With that money we were able to provide coaches, holidays and slitters into primary schools.
As current secretary of the North Kerry Hurling Board, it is a great honour to be part of a board with such great tradition. I am following in the footsteps of 40 secretaries who went before me and who selflessly gave their time to organise competitions for the hurlers of the district, and it is my wish that hurling in North Kerry will continue to prosper over the next 100 years.
We usually associate O'Neills with GAA gear and equipment. So where did the O'Neills come from in North Kerry?
Right, the official name of the club is Crotta O'Neills Hurling Club. It's called after Morris O'Neill, a Republican who was executed from Castlevine in 1942, and the club took on his name, and so the official name of the club is Crotta O'Neills.
I was chairman for about 25 years, I'd say, and I played all from young for little. I was gone into my 40s before I stopped, but I played in 4 county finals and I won 1. But I was involved with the county then for a good bit as a selector and so forth, like so. Yeah, I enjoyed it all, like, that was it.
I am the current chairman of the club and have been for a good number of years. I took over from Dan McCarthy, who was chairman, the previous chairman, and in the last 10 years we have a lot of work put into the field facilities down here. We have new pitch and new ball wall and walkways, and hopefully we have a lot of progress made on and off the pitch, and I'm delighted to be involved with Crotta O'Neills.
The first game of hurling was played in Easter Sunday in '84. We played Ballyduff. It was a big day for us, like the first game in our new field. It was a great day, there was a great crowd and everything, but it was a lovely fine day and all, like, but that was the start of it, then it went away from there.
While acknowledging the more recent growth of the game in the Tralee schools, by virtue of its location in the very heartland of North Kerry and driven by highly motivated teachers, Causeway Comprehensive School played a very important role as a Kerry hurling nursery.
We were very fortunate in Causeway Comprehensive School, where I taught and where I became principal later, to have a number of teachers who were absolutely dedicated to hurling. But hurling was really, really important within the school, and we had great success at both Munster level and All-Ireland level. We played in the Harty Cup,
but we also won the college's B final in 1977, and that was a hugely important event. Causeway, like other clubs around the area, depended on the goodwill and generosity of landowners for a field from year to year. Then in 1988, the grand official opening of the field took place, and that was a spectacular occasion insofar as the president of the GA at the time, John Dowling, was airlifted into the field by Xavier McAuliffe on helicopter and landed in the centre of the field to declare the field open.
Hurling in Ardfert goes way back to the early days of the GAA. Players from Carrahan backboned the Kerry All-Ireland winning team of 1891. And since the start of the 20th century, teams under various club names have perpetuated the game in the area. The club has been ever present during the last 100 years of North Kerry competition and has seen successes at all levels, from underage to senior.
I'm delighted to be here this morning in St Brendan's Park, Ardfert, the home of St Brendan's Hurling Club. Before we came to our current grounds, we had a number of other locations where we started out playing hurling. The Loch below in Banna, which is now Car Park 3, Cooltraw, the Patch. So we played in 3 different locations in Banna. And then we came up to Ardfert, where we played in Hannafin's Field, Collins's Field, Sullivan's and Brandonwell, until in 1928 members of the local community went ahead and purchased land through the Land Commission, and then in 1952 they closed the field for redevelopment. The field then was closed until the 26th of April 1953, when it was officially opened. On that day we had 2 tournament games here. On that day the great Christy Ring from Cork also played on the Cork team here. In the near future, we have great plans for our current field here in Sackville, and we will be redeveloping a brand new playing field here. Our field currently is used extensively by St Brendan's Hurling Club, Ardfert Football Club and the ladies of Killard Camogie Club.
As the 27th chairman of the North Kerry Hurling Board, it falls to me to preside over the activities of the board in Centenary year. The last 100 years have been very good to the people of North Kerry. It has also been very good to the hurling community. The hurling community now has greater facilities, greater skill level, greater commitment, and there's a great more players playing the game. Long may it continue.
The GAA offers an opportunity to all, irrespective of race, creed or background, to be part of the Gaelic Games family.
Looking back on those days now, as a man in my mid-70s, I think the big thing about it was that it gave us a sense of identity. And I think, in a lot of our work nowadays, we find that a lot of young people, they mightn't have that sense of identity that we got through the hurling. It was like Matt the Thrasher for the glory of the little village.
On Sunday, 13th of April 2025, as part of the Centenary Events programme, the Uachtaráin of Common Luclascoil, Jarlath Burns, attended a specially convened meeting of the North Kerry Hurling Board in the Lixnaw GAA club rooms, and afterwards unveiled a commemorative plaque on the grounds of Hermitage Park.
Getting competitions up and running, we wouldn't have an association, we would have pure chaos. And while Cusick set this organisation up in 1884, there have been many Cusics since that, people who we've had to rely upon to keep the association going. And when all of the pomp and ceremony of today subsides, and whenever we all go home and go back to our houses, we'll be relying on people in this room to organise hurling in this part of Kerry.
Some Common Lucascoil náisiúnta agus an gachbáil Common Lucascoil ar an céadal síos óilim sa mhuias a go liver fad ma jalar an choruach an seach nniu. Chun ómós a hort na daoine a chrúthaí on board Kerry Hui agus le bheith smuoinú ar an téchi fásta le muinnín agus le dóchas agus le grá. 100 years ago, almost on this day, a group of people came together to form the North Kerry Board. Ireland was a very different place then than what it is now. In the 10 years previous to that, there had been a world war, there had been a rising, there had been a war of independence and a civil war and partition of our own country. And Ireland was unsure of itself at that stage, but there was one thing that kept us going through all of that, and it was Cumbernauld Gael. And that's the thing that would sustain all of us through the 100 years since then. And we can be so thankful to all of those people. And those people and the people who came after them should be very proud of all of you, because you have kept that tradition going in all of the clubs and keeping hurling alive in this and thriving in this part of Kerry. The past built the present and the present builds the future, and we can look forward to the future with great hope and with great confidence, not only that hurling is going to sustain in this area, but with the efforts of the Hurling Development Committee and all of us who are committed to seeing this wonderful game, which epitomises our culture like nothing else, thrive in the years to come. So leshin is on a more do on Yaksha and Ochtu and almost in Adini a Hurley Ford Theory Hu.
That was 100 years of North Kerry hurling, which has given countless hours and years of enjoyment to the hurling community in the various parishes over the past century. We look forward to the future with confidence and hope that in 100 years from now, the game of hurling will still be as strong and vibrant in North Kerry as it is now. Our young people will continue to play the game in a sporting manner, and the rivalries between the clubs will continue into the future. It will remain a major part of our culture and identity, one that we are proud of. The names of the players may change, the standards will rise, the facilities will improve, but the basic skills of hurling, with slither and hurley, will remain the same.